The Aquest Podcast, Funds Industry Conversations.
Hello, Aquest Podcast listeners, and welcome to this episode of the Aquest Podcast. This is episode 2 of our autumn-winter 2025 season. I'm joined again by Dáire Lawlor, and we're adopting our agony aunt personas to deal with the frequently asked questions we receive around the areas of dealing with a financial regulator. So we've titled the episode Love Languages of a Financial Regulator, and really we're looking at the kinds of ways that firms deal with a financial regulator that are effective and that really get you into a relationship of mutual trust and benefit versus some of the other kind of approaches that we've seen where they have ended up making that relationship more difficult and break down to an extent. So we thought it might be useful for us to share our accumulated knowledge over all the years that we've been working in the financial services industry and give you some hints and tips on how to organize your engagements with the financial regulator so that they are as effective as they can be from both the firm's perspective and also from the financial regulator's perspective. So with that, get on with the show. Hope you enjoy it.
The Aquest Podcast, Funds Industry Conversations.
Hi, Dáire. Welcome back.
Danny, I made it at last.
Well, you weren't scared off after the first episode.
No, I enjoyed it, and reaction has been generally positive. I'm delighted to report.
So it's nice when people say nice things to your face.
Indeed it is, whatever they may say elsewhere is entirely up to them. But no, it's all been good, and so looking forward to number 2.
Number 2, and tell me, what have you been up to in the last couple of weeks since we last...
I've been being busy. I'm fortunate I've had clients. I do some work with a firm called ETF Book, and we had John, my colleague from ETF Book, was in Dublin, so we did a grand tour. We were at the ETF Stream event in the Stock Exchange, which was sponsored by Cassis and State Street, and that turned out to be a very good session. And then we had a couple of workshops with clients in the afternoon, and which all proved to be very productive. Yeah.
For myself, I guess I always feel there's 2 points in the year, particularly when you're in our game, so the kind of independent advisor, where the phone rings and the firms are kind of getting more excited. And that's usually around late January, early February, when they've set their plans for the year and they're looking for training or whatever it is, reviews. And then early October, when they realise that Christmas and the end of the year was fast approaching. And so there's always a bit of a rush early October.
There's promises to keep.
Yeah, exactly. A budget to spend and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely feel that that's where we've been at. I was at the Waystone Ireland Summit last week. Very nice event.
Yeah,
lovely setting. Very big crowd at it. Panel discussion on ETFs. A panel of industry legends.
All right.
And
why aren't we there, Danny?
Well, I don't know. That's something to aspire to. Someday we'll be on the stage as the industry legends. But also Keith Barry is the keynote speaker doing what he does. And for people who don't know him, I guess he'd be called a mentalist. Is that the... He was a magician. He's not a magician.
No, I don't think he could be treated or a magician anymore, but he does hypnotism and various kind of hocus pocus.
Reading your mind. And then he was also working in that kind of problem solving and working it into a business context and stuff like that. Good show. Always when something like that's at an industry event and it involves dragging people up out of the crowd, everybody's even more so reluctant to be the one picked out. He had one piece where he had 2 people stood beside each other and he's between them, and then he touched one of them on the arm and asked both of them where did he touch them, and they point to their arm or whatever. They had their eyes closed, obviously. Right. So the one person wasn't touching one person, but she was still able to identify exactly where her pal across the way had been touched. So that's pretty weird. Yeah. But I'm glad it wasn't me at the same. So that was good, but good show.
Yeah, very good. Well, in fairness, Waystone know how to push the boat out when the occasion merits it.
They certainly do. And so let's move into today's episode. How are you feeling in your role as agony aunt? Does it sit well with you?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I'm looking forward to getting better and better at it.
Is agony aunt the right term for 2 gloves?
Well, I think the cap fits wear it, Danny, So,
I don't know that agony uncle is a thing.
It doesn't have the same ring to it.
No. So the topic that we're going to chat about today is love languages of a financial regulator.
Right. Okay.
Right. Have you ever heard this concept of love languages?
I have to confess I'm not tremendously familiar with it. Give us a quick overview, Danny.
Well, I can only tell you what I've read off the cover page, right? But it comes from a book called The Five Love Languages: How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate.
Right, there you go.
Probably the first financial services podcast in history to talk about
Five love
heartfelt
languages.
commitments to your mate.
Indeed.
Book by Gary Chapman. But the idea is that there are 5 distinct ways that individuals have preferences for when it comes to, I guess, receiving love. So it might be
Engaging
physical touch,
with their significant other.
exactly,
Okay.
service, gifts, quality time, and words of affirmation.
Right.
So I guess in this series of podcasts, we're thinking about the questions that we often get asked. And I very, very often get asked questions about how to deal with a financial regulator, how to operate in a way that you're kind of speaking their language,
Mhm.
and not doing things that will push their buttons that makes your life more difficult rather
Indeed.
than less.
Indeed.
So
I'm beginning to see where the analogy is.
Are you getting there? So I think the tagline is how to make the financial regulator love you.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Is it a stretch?
No. Let's walk down that road. It's there in front of us.
But I think love from the financial regulator is for a regulated firm is to be left alone and not see too much
Being
of
allowed to go play golf.
Exactly. This is that part of the relationship.
Yeah.
But it is, obviously it's something that comes up quite a lot because they're a key stakeholder for a regulated firm, right? So you want to know.
Oh, without a doubt, I think if we go with that significant other reference, they definitely are that.
Absolutely. So the first kind of question I have is, I'm going to apply to the financial regulator for authorization as a financial services firm. Do you have any tips? Now, I deal quite a bit with firms that are looking for licenses from central bank, and I guess you probably do too, or certainly.
I would have been a contributor to those requests. So thing one, I would say, and you're more expert than I am, but it's to be clear, to be honest, and to be prepared. There's my triumvirate of values.
Yes, I think I'd agree with that. I think the opposite side works. So where firms have a difficult experience when they engage with the regulator for a license, and it's a little bit self-serving, so you have to forgive me here, is if they don't engage with local expert advice, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you see firms that will try and do DIY it, right? They do it themselves and they chuck something in just to get the ball rolling. And then it'll get chucked back at them pretty quickly from their regulator, and then the phone rings and you're looking at what they sent in and your head's in your hands and go, oh, it's miles off the mark. So what works well is a very good, high quality submission that's clear, that outlines why you need this license, how you're going to organize yourself once you get your license, and creates a kind of a credible business model around what you're trying to do. So that all works well, and that gets you on the right footing immediately with central bank. If you send in something that's a kind of a DIY half-arse job, it's such a pain in the arse for a regulator to deal with, because where do you even start, right? There's so many holes in it. So it tends to just get kicked back and asked, did you get local advice on this? Which means get local advice on this, right? So the quality of the initial application, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the engagement. Now, if you have made that first mistake and you've sent in an application that is wide of the mark, there is opportunity to fix that, right? But you really have to go above and beyond with your next round and really go to town and really do a good job. And you can kind of claw back some of the brownie points that you've lost if you do that.
Yeah, but I suppose there's an element of resources are scarce everywhere, and the bank doesn't want to have to be poring over something that's going to take them an awful long time to get to a place where.
Well, even with a good quality application that you can read and understand, you're still going to have a lot of questions because you're looking at risks and you're looking at the viability of the business model and all that. So even with a good application, you're going to get pages and pages of comments.
I had an interesting conversation with somebody who shall remain unknown or unnamed for this.
Please, we don't defamation.
But they have been hired to set up a business here by a firm from elsewhere, and they had been told to go and get a license. And he said, okay, well, in order to do this, I'm going to need to have my PCFs lined up. I'm going to have a budget. We're going to need to be able to, show substance, and I'm going to need local help, whatever you. And the answer came back from headquarters, don't be ridiculous. Manage your regulator. Just get on with it. So with the best will in the world, the individual went off and wrote up a business plan and filled out the questionnaires and did all the work in the full knowledge that it was never going to get anywhere. But what could he do? The people who were paying him had told him to get a submission in, and they'd also told him they weren't giving him the wherewithal to set himself up for success. So he got it in. It was duly rejected. And by virtue of it having been rejected, he then had a business case to go back to headquarters to get some budget to do properly. Now, it's not the paradigm one ought to follow, but I suspect he's not the only person who's ever been through that cycle. And the issue,
I would say it's a minority rather than a majority. So I think you looked at poor applications, or ones that get immediately turned away. Some of them would be that situation where, listen, the regulator is there to do their job, and if you're in between, I have no problem blaming the regulator. Like if the letter comes in and from the regulator says you need to have 3 full-time equivalents in this business, take that and go back to the firm and says this is the regulator, right? That's kind of what they're there for in a sense. So that's okay, but I'd say more often it's kind of it's cost saving and how they put the application together. Like I had one where it was that scenario. They sent in the application and then they came, and the application was a kind of a copy and paste of what they did in the UK. And staff wise, I think it involved half a salesperson in Ireland, and everything else is now the UK, and that's not going anywhere.
Never going to happen.
So.
But sure, God loves a trier. So I think that's definitely part of it. And then it's just around having a clear view on what you're doing. And if it's something new, and interestingly, I think one of the things that's changed over the last few years is that there's now an opportunity for dialogue, where people can tease concepts out. They've obviously got the innovation hub as well. So there's more of a desire to help people set themselves up for success in advance of the submission of the application. I know there's a lot of frustration expressed by certain corners of the community on the CASP, but did encourage preliminary conversations with applicant firms with a view to at least establishing ground rules in the run-up to formal applications being brought on board. Some of the firms availed of that. Some of them felt that that was an unnecessary drain on their resources, and they were being used as kind of proxy educators to a degree. And there's probably an element of truth in that in both directions. But that concept of the door is definitely more open to conversational engagement in the run-up to applications than used to be the case, I think.
It ebbs and flows, but certainly was at a lower ebb recently. But I think if a firm does get that opportunity to engage with the regulator in that pre-authorization or in the innovation, and if there is an element of education, and it's a kind of a two-way thing, it's time well spent. Right. Particularly you take the CASPs, and Micah is all new. A lot of it, everybody's learning it, right? So if you are willing to roll up your sleeves and help with that education, you're just getting everybody up the learning curve more quickly, and then it allows them to be in a position to process applications on a more timely basis. And if you kind of step back and leave it to others to do, then maybe they'll get there, but it's going to take that bit longer. So I'd just be wary. That kind of leads us into the second question.
So sorry, which one of the love languages was that then? So
you're going to tie it to one, aren't we?
Well, would that be gift giving? You need to give them the gift of a clear application, well resourced and laid out. How about that?
It's a stretch, but let's go with that. Okay. Question 2. We have a meeting with the Financial Regulator coming up. How do we avoid ballsing it up?
Easy. As the Boy Scouts song goes, be prepared. Know what there's going to be some kind of, they're either in on a general review or they're coming in on a thematic scenario. Either way, you need to have people who know their oysters facing off, and you need to make sure that if they're on walkabout on the floor, that the staff have a clear view on what they do, why they do it, what they do when it goes wrong, etc., and that they're able to articulate that in a clear manner.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
Preparation is key, and I work with firms who are getting ready for an engagement with the central bank, and it could be anything. It could be pre-authorization meeting, it could be a fitness and probity interview, it could be a regular supervisory, it could be a thematic or whatever. But that being prepared is just critical for having a decent conversation that's useful for everybody. And as I said to firms, it's not that being prepared is going to help you, I don't know, like manipulate something or hide something. You know, the regulator's going to find what the regulator's going to find, and that's fine. But like if they ask a question about something that they read in the materials you've submitted in advance, a breach or something in the minutes or whatever, and you don't know the background to that, you can't have a conversation then about what you've done to fix it and how you've kept that fix in place.
Which sends its own red flags.
Well, it sends a flag, but then like, I mean, you spend your time scratching around trying to remember what this thing was about, as opposed to getting on to the meat of the conversation. So it leaves a very bad impression. It is a bit of a waste of time then in trying to understand the issue, and you leave yourself more open to getting follow-ups and stuff like that. So you really do need, but then, you know, people are working in these businesses, you know, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or whatever hours they got to do. So they will be very familiar with the ins and outs of the operation, the functions that they're responsible for. So they are generally in quite a good position for detailed conversations with supervisors and regulators. But even so, you really need to be on top of the materials and just be on your game so that it's a valuable exercise for everybody. And if they're going to find stuff, they're going to find stuff. But at least let them have the context for why something's come up.
Yeah, no, but that's it. And at the end of the day, you know, it's the whole regulation as a feature or a bug, you know, in a way, what they're looking to do is assure that risk is being managed appropriately in your business. And if for some reason slack practice or poor training means that it isn't being managed as well as it might be, and they surface that, while that might be a painful process, it's definitely, you know, it's to everybody's benefit that these things are captured and dealt with. So
Oh, by the way, I may well be right. Whatever they find,
that's what I'm saying. Absolutely,
they may well be right. As a firm, you need to be open to that.
And you know, I think this one is probably your physical touch piece. You know,
like quality time,
walking the floor, quality time, and physical touch. Indeed, there you go. Holding hands on the sofa with the regulator.
That's to kind of get you rested. Next question.
Moving on.
What's the worst thing I could do or say to a financial regulator?
I don't know.
Well, I would say I do know, but I'm not going to tell you.
I do know what I'm going to, which is more or less the same thing. You know, yes, but is generally better than no. But it's no. I think it's very simple. It's back to the same point. You know, you've just got a prior preparation prevents piss poor performance.
Oh my gosh,
an old bottom line used to tell me. So I think it's just all about, you know, you need to be ready.
Yeah, and so when I see firms getting ready for, let's say it's an authorization application or a meeting or whatever, and you're trying to get them in the right mindset for what it's like to be a regulated firm in a particular jurisdiction, one thing that you nearly always get asked, particularly if it's a new firm that hasn't operated here before, is what's the minimum? What's the minimum I need to do? What's the minimum amount of people I need to have in this business? What's the minimum compliance standard and that kind of stuff? So if you want to turn off your regulator, ask them what's the minimum. Because that just immediately...
absolute least I have to do.
What that is, right? Because it just sets the tone for what this business is about. I'm just going to scrape by when it comes to important things like that. So what I would advise for is that's really not how you need to think. What you need to think about is, how many people do I need to run this business in a way that's effective and compliant? Now, that doesn't mean that if you're a smaller business, you need hundreds of people, right? So you are trying to get that balance, because that's kind of the other conversation. How many PCFs do I need and that kind of stuff? Well, what's your business going to do, right? And
the question is, how many do you need to effectively run this business? And if you can
business in a sustainable way, right? Because if you're taking on loads of people and they all getting paid, and you can't make the numbers add up,
then
that's
your
not business.
business plan is ruined.
Exactly. So you do have to be realistic, and you don't have to, in my opinion, add people for the sake of it.
No.
But you do have to have the people that you need to have.
And
that's your starting point. But it's not what's the minimum, because that just is such a flag and such a turn off if that's your approach. So that's a no-no. Other things I think that really will irritate and frustrate a regulator are backsliding. They hate backsliding. If you've made a commitment on something, or you get a risk mitigation program and you've committed to do A, B, and C, and your regulator checks a year later to see are you still doing ABC and you're not, that's a massive no.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
No, they don't like that. And if you're doing something, it's the same thing. You just got to be really clear. And I mean, what's important to the regulator, that you're aware of the risks in your world, that you're going to manage them properly, that you have the benefit of the investor at the core of everything that you do, and that your practice is something that's going to contribute to and not be deleterious to the functioning of the market and the stability of the system,
Ideally, yeah.
And they're kind of, that's like that's the watermark that they need to see on everything that comes their way.
And the other thing I'd add to that is just around capital. So you need to have your capital position secure. You need to know where capital is coming from. You need to have it in place before day one.
Yeah.
You need to have a plan B for what happens if that needs to be increased and where is it going to come from. So the capital piece is all very important too.
Yeah.
The last thing I'd say in that is, in terms of things that will get somebody's back up, is failure to deliver on promises. So you'd often see during an authorization process, when you submit initially, you're not necessarily going to have all these people recruited.
Yeah.
But if you say you're going to have a chief risk officer or a chief financial officer, like, you can't get to the day before authorization and then turn around and say, I've changed my mind, I'm not going to do that. Or that's going to take longer or whatever. Or you get inspected a year down the line and you're supposed to have somebody in place after 6 months and you haven't even started a recruitment campaign.
Mm.
Again, you can imagine if you're in that seat as a regulator, it's worrying as much as anything else, because you're thinking, well, if they've not delivered on that, what else have they not done? So deliver.
It's how professionalism goes. And then I suppose the other thing then that they're very big on, that's kind of a semi-indefinable, is this culture, the concept of culture. And it's something that arises a lot. And it does the fund accountants' heads in, because you can't, how do you measure that? How do I get culture onto this spreadsheet, or extract cultural measures, KPIs on culture? But it's nonetheless it's an intangible, but it's important, and it's been very interesting. I think I may have said last week, I used the analogy of, with the VASPs and the CASPs and the DeFi guys coming to deal with the central bank, that it's like a interpretive dance troupe facing off to a rugby 15, and they have to establish common language around the rules and the regulations and an understanding of. So the idea of build it, break it, learn, build again, that's not what you're doing with people's savings.
Listen, when you're dealing with firms and the individuals involved are from a technology background and they're very innovative, and that is your mindset, which is we're going to build it over the weekend, we're going to launch it on Monday, and then it's not going to work,
and we'll fine tune it.
And as you said, that's just it's just not how the regulated space works.
Exactly.
So how are you able to shift or are you able
well, some firms lean into it. The ones that want to come in from the cold and get access to the bigger global regulated capital markets and the amounts that are in there, they recognize.
They learn to live with it.
So, I think, or they embrace it. Again, it comes back to risk management. If you're flying by the seat of your pants in business terms in a highly volatile, and there was a lot of blaming the investors because they were using collateral, and when its price collapsed, the whole construct fell apart, and they were saying it's the investors' fault because they demanded, these broader collateralization mechanisms.
That will be a unique proposition for a financial regulator to say, it's not that my job is to protect the consumer. The consumer's job is to protect me. Good luck with that one.
I use it to illustrate the dilemma that arises, because, one of the tenets of culture in the DeFi and crypto world is DYOR, do your own research, right? And effectively it's caveat emptor, and people will knowingly buy into meme coins that have no intrinsic value other than the last one gets left holding all the worthless crap. And they think that seems to be part of the culture, and that's acceptable. It's like backing a horse.
We're going to talk about crypto in our next episode.
Right.
So we parked that there. But
back at the regulator.
Go back to the regulator. Last couple of questions. So this one is, I want to have a good relationship with my financial regulator. Do you have any advice? What do the best firms do well?
I think it's all of the above. They're prepared, they're clear, they're honest, they anticipate what the regulator demands of them, and they contribute to, in fairness to the regulator, there's consultancy papers issued all of the time. It can be a bit of a lift to get everybody to agree with whatever individual firms put in. Those responses are available. Anybody can read them online,
that's right.
whatever. And just the regulator is as much a part of this ecosystem as your payment rail providers, as your legal firms, as any other part. And we're all in this together. They're there for a reason. And if we take off the industry hat and put on the individual saving for his retirement or to buy that cottage in Bulgaria that we've always hankered after, Danny.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, they're there for that. So it's just about having a healthy, open and clear relationship with them.
Yeah, I think where firms do well, a couple of things. One is it's important to, try to be in the same mindset as a financial regulator.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned it there, it's about risk. Mm-hmm. So they very much view the world through the prism of risk.
Yeah.
So if you have an ask, what could go wrong? Or what are you going to do to manage, mitigate, monitor, eliminate that risk? So again, when you engage, if you can try and view it through that prism, at least then you're starting on the same page of where the regulator is going to come from. The other thing is firms that take the lead and are proactive. It's very beneficial. So if you do reviews of different parts of your business ahead of time, and then usually doing a review, internal or external, they'll come up with recommendations. Ideally, the recommendations that are achievable, that haven't identified an enormous compliance gap, but you're trying to drive up standards. And if you can demonstrate that that's the way that your business operates, you're looking to get better all the time, that definitely puts you on a good footing with your regulator. And the last thing I'd say is, you think about things like risk mitigation programs. They get their supervisory to financial regulators used quite frequently where they've identified a risk, and again, they're trying to drive up standards. If you're the recipient of one, it's important to, when I say to firms, is own it, fix it, keep it fixed. So if this is what's been identified, and then you have your engagement with your regulator before it's finalised, this is what you need to do. You have to own that these are the risks in your business. How are you going to monitor, manage, mitigate, eliminate, and then make sure whatever that fix is that you put in place,
keep on doing it.
Exactly. If somebody checks it in 2 years' time, it's still there, that there's no backsliding. You got to manage internally your expectations. Getting a risk mitigation program is part of a supervisory process. It's not a sanction or anything like that. So you don't need to necessarily lose your mind over it.
But you do have to take it seriously.
Well, you have to take it seriously. And again, that builds a good relationship with a regulator if they can see that you are taking it seriously. And even if you're in a breach situation, if they can see that you've got to grips with the situation and you're very actively looking to deal with it and put permanent fixes in place, then I've heard the regulators say this before, that how you react to breach is nearly as important as what the breach is itself.
And breaches happen, and it's all around number one, what exactly did happen, how did that happen, and how do we stop it from happening again? And that's what it's
easy as that.
Yeah, well, easily said.
Yeah. Last question then.
Go on.
How do I say no to a financial regulator without digging myself into a hole?
Yes, but.
That's no in a different language.
No, well, I think you've got to offer it. You've either got to qualify your no and clearly explain in a defensible fashion why it is no, and sometimes that is the case. I've had situations where, particularly around reporting, where getting the data that they want in the length of as quickly as they want it is just not possible. If it's a budgetary thing or we don't have enough people to do it, the answer will be, well, go get more people. So you need to be it needs to be a defensible position. Yeah,
I agree. I think the first thing to obviously realize is that there's an imbalance in power in this relationship.
Yeah,
because
they've got the big stick.
They got the stick and you certainly don't. And an outright no is unlikely to get you on any of these love languages, right? So it does have to be reason to, and ideally you're offering an alternative, and whether that is
words of affirmation and acts of service. 2 love languages have to be deployed.
Yeah, and deploy them in big style. But you do have to offer alternatives, as you said, to understand the ultimate objective that's trying to be achieved, and then how you're going to get there, but by an alternative route. That's probably the way to think about it. The other thing is for firms to understand the local context. So you see this sometimes where if you have financial services organizations that operate in multiple jurisdictions, and the approach that you might take in interacting with your regulator in one jurisdiction could be quite different than in another. And in some jurisdictions, the expectation is that you're open and transparent and cooperative, and if there's a breach or an issue, that you come out with your hands up. You know, that's how you interact with your regulator. And in other jurisdictions, you get the lawyers in, and you put the shutters down, and you defend your position, and you say nothing. You're forced into court. And they're very, very different approaches. And if you have the latter approach at group level being forced down at the local level, and that's not how the local regulators used to dealing with firms, there'll only be one winner. It won't be you. And you really put yourself in a very harmed position in terms of your relationship with your local regulators. So you have to be careful.
And there's definitely instances of where, you know, in firms that are headquartered elsewhere, when you're saying, I need emergency budget and prioritization of X, Y, and Z in order to fulfill my regulatory obligation. Finding someone who actually gets that and is willing to support that, as opposed to, say, manage your regulator, you know, can be challenging. It can involve quite a bit of escalation to get the regulator to be taken seriously. And I think the absence of the mandate to support or promote business is in some ways a strength in terms of probity and all that good stuff, but it is a distinguishing factor from other jurisdictions also. And there will be an expectation in some instances that the regulator should be helping to increase the inflows of the launch of the new product or whatever, which is not in an Irish context.
Not anymore. Not since a long time.
Yes, and
for a reason.
And it was a world of hurt at that time.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting looking at all the leveraged loans issues that are beginning to bubble to the surface in the States as we speak here, how, you know, that regulatory laxity. There are chickens that may well come home to roost over the next week or so, which is why the regulator is such an important part of our world. We need them, but as individuals and from an industry perspective.
From an economic perspective.
Absolutely. It's a feature, not a bug.
And on that note,
yes,
we're going to wrap up this episode there.
Let's do that.
We're going to pick up in the next episode something about crypto. I haven't decided yet, but it's going to be more than like.
I just can't wait to see what the will we still be talking about love languages?
No, we're done with love languages.
We're moving on from love.
We've exhausted that metaphor.
Lust, perhaps.
I'm going to let you off to go and buy your tickets for Luke Combs, because I know you're a big music fan, right? I don't know if you're a Luke Combs fan. He's doing Slane next year. He's in another game.
I do know who he is, and I understand he's something of a phenomenon. I'd say it's unlikely I'll be found on the slopes of Slane Castle's demesne for that particular affair.
Well, I probably won't try that. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I quite like what he does. I just my days of going to fields with 60,000 other people in them without it involving grown men fighting over a rugby ball are kind of behind me. I like small gigs.
On that note, thanks again for joining me, Dáire. We'll catch you next episode of the Aquest Podcast.
Thank you, Danny.
The Aquest Podcast. Funds Industry Conversations.